Jake Morrison pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders as he walked through the empty halls of research. Station Epsilon 7. The wind outside howled like a monster, making the metal walls shake and groan. He had been on this frozen moon called Valdres Prime for 8 months now, and he still wasn't used to the terrible storms that came without warning. The station was small, built to house only 12 people at most. Right now, there were only 4 humans living there. Jake worked as the wildlife technician, which meant he studied the strange animals that lived on this ice-covered world. Most days, he felt lonely and missed Earth terribly. Jake stopped at the big window in the main corridor and looked outside. Snow flew sideways in the fierce wind. The storm had been going for 3 days now, and weather reports said it would continue for at least 2 more days. Nothing could survive outside in this weather, even the hardy ice creatures that called. This moon home had found places to hide and wait. He was about to turn away from the window when something caught his eye. Far in the distance, he saw a dark shape moving against the white snow. Jake pressed his face against the cold glass and squinted his eyes. At first, he thought it might be debris blown by the wind, but then he realized the shape was moving in a straight line, fighting against the storm. What the hell? Jake whispered to himself. He ran to the equipment room and grabbed a pair of high-powered binoculars. When he got back to the window, it took him a moment to find the moving shape again. The storm made everything blurry and hard to see, but when he finally focused on the dark figure, his mouth fell open in shock. Not it was an animal, but unlike anything he had ever seen before. The creature looked like a wolf, but it was huge, maybe twice the size of any wolf from Earth. Its fur was thick and silver gray, and it moved with purpose through the deadly storm. But that wasn't the most amazing part. The giant wolf was pulling something behind it. Jake adjusted the binoculars and saw that the creature had some kind of makeshift sled tied to its body with what looked like vines or rope. On the sled were 3 smaller shapes, completely still and covered in snow. "This can't be real," Jake said out loud, but his hands were shaking as he held the binoculars. The mother wolf was clearly struggling. Every step looked painful as she dragged her heavy load through the deep snow. The wind kept pushing her sideways, and several times Jake thought she might fall down and not get back up. But each time, she found her strength and kept moving forward. Jake realized she was heading straight for the research station. He watched in amazement as the huge wolf came closer and closer. When she was about 50 meters away from the station, she stopped and lifted her head toward the sky. Even through the thick walls and the howling wind, Jake could hear her cry. It wasn't like any animal sound he had ever heard before. It was long and sad and desperate, but there was something else in it too. It almost sounded like she was trying to talk. The wolf howled again, and this time she was looking directly at the station. Her eyes seemed to glow in the dark storm, and Jake felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Those eyes looked intelligent. They looked like the eyes of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Jake dropped the binoculars and ran through the station corridors, his boots echoing loudly on the metal floors. He needed to tell the others about this right away. He found Dr. Amy Carter in the laboratory, studying samples under a microscope. "Amy, you need to come see this right now," Jake said, breathing hard from running. Amy looked up from her work with an annoyed expression. She was a serious woman who didn't like to be interrupted when she was working. "Jake, I'm in the middle of something important. Can it wait?" "No, it can't wait. There's a giant wolf outside, and she's got pups with her. I think they might be dead or dying." Amy stared at him for a moment, then slowly put down her microscope tools. "Jake, you know that nothing can survive outside in this storm. You've probably been looking at debris or ice formations. The mind can play tricks when you're isolated for too long." "I know what I saw," Jake insisted. Please, just come look." Amy sighed, but followed Jake back to the corridor window. By the time they got there, the wolf had moved even closer to the station. She was now only about 20 meters away. Right at the edge of the security perimeter. Amy picked up the binoculars and looked outside. Jake watched her face change from skepticism to shock to wonder. "My God," she whispered. "Jake, this is incredible. I've never seen anything like this creature in any of our surveys." The wolf had stopped pulling her sled and was now pacing back and forth in front of the station. Every few steps, she would stop and howl toward the building. Her calls were getting weaker, and Jake could see that she was exhausted. The 3 small forms on her sled hadn't moved at all. "She's asking for help," Jake said quietly. Amy lowered the binoculars and looked at him. "Animals don't ask humans for help, Jake. They don't even understand what humans are." "This one does," Jake replied, still watching the wolf through the window. "Look at her. She's not trying to find shelter for herself. She brought her babies here because she thinks we can help them." As if she had heard him, the wolf stopped pacing and looked directly at the window where Jake and Amy were standing. She sat down in the snow and howled one more time. This call was different from the others. It was softer, sadder, and it sounded like a mother crying for her children. Jake felt something break inside his chest. He had never heard anything so heartbreaking in his entire life. "I'm going out there," he said. Amy grabbed his arm. "Jake, no. It's too dangerous. That storm will kill you in minutes, and we don't know if that creature is friendly. It could attack you." Jake gently pulled his arm free. "Look at her, Amy. She's not going to hurt me. She needs help, and her pups are dying. I can't just stand here and watch." Outside, the mother wolf lowered her head and rested it on her front paws. She looked like she was giving up hope. The storm was winning, and her strength was almost gone. Jake made his decision. He was going outside to help, no matter what Amy said. Some things were more important than following safety rules. Jake ran to the equipment room and started putting on his survival suit. The thick, heated clothing would keep him alive in the deadly storm, but only for a short time. Amy followed him, trying to convince him not to go outside. "Jake, please. Think about this," Amy said as she watched him zip up the heavy jacket. "We don't know anything about that creature. It could be dangerous, and even if it's not, you could die in that storm." Jake pulled on his insulated boots and checked the zinc battery on his suit's heating system. "Amy, I've been watching her for 20 minutes. She's not acting like a predator. She's acting like a mother who needs help." He grabbed an emergency medical kit and a portable stretcher from the supply closet. Amy shook her head but didn't try to stop him anymore. She knew Jake well enough to understand that he had made up his mind. "At least take a communication device," Amy said, handing him a radio headset. "If something goes wrong, I need to know right away." Jake nodded and put the headset on. He walked to the station's main airlock and took a deep breath. Through the small window in the door, he could see the wolf still sitting in the snow, waiting. Her head was down, and she looked like she was losing hope. "I'm going out now," Jake said into his radio. "Be careful," Amy's voice crackled in his earpiece. "I'll be watching from the window." Jake opened the airlock door, and immediately the wind tried to knock him down. The cold hit him like a physical blow, even through his heated suit. Snow flew into his face, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. He lowered his head and started walking toward where he had last seen the wolf. Each step was a struggle. The snow was knee-deep, and the wind kept pushing him sideways. Jake's suit was already working hard to keep him warm, and he knew he didn't have much time before the battery would start to run low. After what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, Jake saw a dark shape ahead of him. The wolf was still there, still sitting beside her sled. When she saw Jake approaching, she stood up but didn't move away. Her intelligent amber eyes watched him carefully. Jake stopped about 10 feet away from the wolf and slowly knelt down in the snow. He wanted to show her that he wasn't a threat. The wolf tilted her head to one side, studying him. She was even more magnificent up close. Her silver fur was thick and beautiful, and she was indeed much larger than any earth wolf. But what struck Jake most were her eyes. They held an intelligence that seemed almost human. "Hello, girl," Jake said softly, even though he knew she couldn't understand him. "I'm here to help." A wolf took a step toward him, then stopped. She looked back at her sled, then at Jake again. She seemed to be trying to communicate something. Jake slowly stood up and took a step toward the sled. The wolf watched him, but didn't try to stop him. When Jake got close enough to see what was on the sled, his heart nearly broke. 3 small wolf pups lay motionless on the makeshift stretcher. They were about the size of small dogs, with the same beautiful silver-blue fur as their mother. Their eyes were closed, and Jake couldn't tell if they were breathing. They looked like they had been frozen solid. "Oh no," Jake whispered. He reached out carefully to touch one of the pups. Its fur was stiff with ice, and its body felt cold as stone. But when Jake pressed his fingers against the pup's chest, he thought he felt something, maybe a very slow, weak heartbeat. The mother. Wolf stepped up beside Jake and gently nuzzled one of her babies. She looked up at Jake with eyes full of sadness and hope. She made a soft whining sound that seemed to say, "Please help them." Jake's radio crackled. "Jake, how are you doing out there?" Amy's voice sounded worried. "I'm okay," Jake replied. "Amy, the pups are in bad shape. They're frozen, but I think they might still be alive. I need to get them inside right away. Can you move them safely?" Jake looked at the makeshift sled the mother wolf had been pulling. It was made from what looked like tree branches and animal hide, held together with twisted vines. It was crude, but effective. I think so. The mother already has them on a kind of stretcher. Jake carefully lifted the corners of the sled to test its weight. It was heavy, but he could manage it. The 3 pups were larger than earth wolf pups, probably weighing about 15 pounds each. The mother wolf seemed to understand what Jake was planning to do. She moved to one side of the sled and looked at Jake expectantly. When Jake started to pull the sled, she moved alongside him, as if she wanted to help. The journey back to the station was even harder than the trip out. Jake was pulling extra weight now, and the storm seemed to be getting worse. Several times he stumbled and nearly fell. Each time, the mother wolf would stop and wait for him to get back up. About halfway back to the station, Jake's legs gave out, and he collapsed in the snow. The cold was getting through his suit, and his muscles were cramping from the effort. He lay there for a moment, wondering if he would be able to make it back. The mother wolf came over to him and did something amazing. She grabbed the front of Jake's jacket gently in her teeth and helped pull him back to his feet. Then she moved to the front of the sled and started pulling it herself, looking back at Jake as if to say, "Come on, we can do this together." Together, Jake and the wolf managed to drag the sled with the 3 pups back to the research station. By the time they reached the airlock, Jake was exhausted and shivering uncontrollably. His suit's battery was nearly dead, and he could barely feel his hands and feet. Amy was waiting at the airlock door with a medical team from the station. Dr. Lisa Bennett, the station commander, and Pete Walker, a maintenance technician, helped Jake bring the sled inside. That the mother wolf started to follow them through the airlock, but Amy stepped forward to block her way. "Wait," Jake said, breathing heavily. "She needs to come inside too. She's been out in that storm for who knows how long. And she won't leave her babies." Amy looked uncertain. "Jake, We can't bring a wild animal into the station. It's against all safety protocols. Jake looked at the mother wolf, who was standing at the threshold of the airlock, looking desperately at her 3 pups being carried away from her. She's not just a wild animal, Jake said. She's a mother who brought her dying children to us for help. We can't separate them now. Dr. Bennett stepped forward. As station commander, it was her decision to make. She looked at the wolf, who was now whining softly and trying to follow her pups. Bring her to the medical bay, Dr. Bennett said finally. But keep her sedated if necessary. The safety of the crew comes first. Jake nodded gratefully. The mother wolf seemed to sense that. She was being allowed to stay with her babies. She followed the humans through the station corridors, staying close to the stretcher that carried her pups, but not threatening anyone. In the medical bay, Amy and Dr. Bennett began examining the 3 frozen pups, while Jake helped the mother wolf get settled in a corner of the room. She lay down but kept her eyes fixed on her babies, ready to protect them if needed. Jake, Amy called out, her voice full of amazement. You need to see this. These pups aren't completely frozen. They're in some kind of suspended animation. Their life signs are barely detectable, but they're still alive. Jake felt a surge of hope. Maybe they weren't too late after all. Maybe they could actually save these 3 little lives. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something incredible. Jake sat in the medical bay, watching Amy and Dr. Bennett work on the 3 frozen pups. He had changed out of his cold weather suit and wrapped himself in a warm blanket, but he still felt cold inside. The mother wolf lay in the corner, her golden eyes never leaving her babies. Amy ran a scanner over the first pup, a small female with white markings on her chest. The scanner beeped softly as it measured the pup's vital signs. This is incredible, Amy said, looking at the readings. Their heart rates are so slow, I can barely detect them. 1 beat every 30 seconds. Their breathing is almost stopped completely. Dr. Bennett checked the second pup, a larger male with darker fur. Their body temperature is far below what should be fatal, she said. But somehow they're still alive. I've never seen anything like this. Jake stood up and moved closer to the examination table. What do you think happened to them? I think they went into some kind of natural hibernation, Amy explained. Like how some Earth animals sleep through winter, but much more extreme. Their bodies shut down almost completely to survive. The mother wolf made a soft whining sound. She had been quiet since they brought her inside, but now she seemed restless. She stood up and walked closer to the examination table, sniffing the air around her pups. Easy, girl, Jake said gently. He had started thinking of her as Luna because of the moon-shaped marking on her forehead. We're trying to help them. Luna looked at Jake, then at her pups, then back at Jake. She made another soft sound, almost like she was trying to talk to him. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She walked over to a cabinet and used her nose to push open a drawer. Inside the drawer were medical tools. Did she just... Dr. Bennett started to say Luna picked up a small instrument in her mouth and brought it to Jake. It was a temperature probe, exactly the kind of tool they had been using to check the pup's body heat. She's trying to help, Jake said in amazement. She understands what we're doing. Amy shook her head. That's impossible. Animals don't understand medical procedures. But Luna proved Amy wrong again. She went back to the cabinet and brought out a warming pad, then a stethoscope. Each tool was something the humans had been using or thinking about using. This changes everything, Dr. Bennett said quietly. This creature is far more intelligent than we thought. Jake knelt down next to Luna and gently took the stethoscope from her mouth. Thank you, girl. You're a good mother. Luna seemed to understand his tone. She wagged her tail once, then went back to watching her pups. For the next 6 hours, Jake and Amy worked together to understand how the pups' bodies worked. They took blood samples, measured brain activity, and tested their responses to different treatments. Nothing seemed to wake the pups up. "We've tried warming them slowly," Amy said, looking frustrated. "We've tried medications, electrical stimulation, everything I can think of. Nothing is working." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. It was getting late, and he had been awake for almost 20 hours. But he wasn't going to give up. Not when Luna was counting on him. "Maybe we're thinking about this wrong," Jake said. "These aren't Earth animals. Maybe they need something different to wake up." Dr. Bennett looked up from her computer, where she was researching hibernation in Earth animals. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe their natural wake-up process isn't just about getting warm. Maybe there's something else their mother normally does to bring them out of hibernation." As if she had heard him, Luna stood up and walked over to her pups. She sniffed each one carefully, then opened her mouth and made a low, humming sound. It was different from her earlier howls and whines. This sound was musical, like she was singing a lullaby. Jake listened carefully to Luna's song. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm that seemed familiar but alien at the same time. "Amy, are you recording this?" Amy quickly started her audio recorder. Luna continued her song for several minutes, moving her head from one pup to another. When she finished, she looked at Jake expectantly. "Play it back," Jake said. Amy played the recording, and Luna's haunting melody filled the medical bay. Jake noticed that the sound had a specific frequency, almost like a sonar signal. "That's it," Jake said suddenly. "She's using sound to wake them up, some kind of acoustic stimulation." Amy looked skeptical. "Sound waves can't restart a hibernating metabolism." "Maybe they can for these creatures," Jake replied. He was already moving toward the station's communication equipment. "We have sonic generators for the communication arrays. If I can match the frequency of Luna's song." Jake spent the next 2 hours working with the station's electronics. He had always been good with machines, and he used every trick he knew to build a device that could reproduce Luna's song. Luna watched him work, occasionally making her humming sound as if she was trying to help him get the frequency right. Finally, Jake had a working sonic generator. He placed it near the examination table where the 3 pups lay. "Okay, let's try this." He turned on the device, and Luna's song filled the room again. But this time, it was amplified and precise. Jake watched the pups carefully for any sign of response. At first, nothing happened. Then Amy gasped. "Jake, look at the monitors." The heart rate monitor for the first pup was starting to beat faster. Instead of one beat every 30 seconds, it was now beating once every 10 seconds. "It's working," Dr. Bennett said in amazement. Luna seemed to sense the change in her pup. She moved closer and added her own voice to the electronic song, creating a harmony that seemed to resonate through the entire medical bay. The second pup's monitor started beeping faster too. Then the third. All 3 little hearts were beginning to beat with more strength. But Jake could see that the sound alone wasn't enough. The pups needed more than just the wake-up signal. They needed warmth, nutrients, and probably other things that their mother would normally provide. "We need to combine the sound with everything else," Jake said. "Heat, electrical stimulation, maybe even some kind of scent signal." For the next several hours, Jake and Amy worked like a team of mad scientists. They surrounded the pups with warming blankets, connected them to 4 drips with nutrient solutions, and used electrical pads to stimulate their muscles. All the while, the sonic generator played Luna's song, and Luna herself added her voice whenever. The pups seemed to be struggling. The mother wolf became a full partner in the rescue effort. She seemed to know exactly when each pup needed more sound, more warmth, or just the comfort of her presence. She would nudge Jake toward the right equipment, or bring Amy tools that she needed. As the sun began to rise outside the station, Jake saw the first real sign of success. The smallest pup, the female with the white chest markings, opened her eyes. They were the most beautiful blue eyes Jake had ever seen, bright and intelligent, like her mother's golden ones. The little pup looked around the medical bay with confusion, then saw her mother and made a tiny squeaking sound. Luna's response was pure joy. She gently licked her daughter's face and made soft, encouraging sounds. The pup tried to lift her head and managed to move it just a little. "She's going to make it," Amy said, and Jake could hear tears in her voice. The second pup, the dark-furred male, opened his eyes an hour later. He was stronger than his sister and managed to lift his head on his own. Luna was beside herself with happiness, nuzzling both of her awakening children. But the third pup, the smallest male, was still not responding. His heart was beating faster. No, but his eyes remained closed. Jake could see that Luna was becoming worried about him. Jake watched the monitors carefully as the third pup struggled to wake up. The smallest male's heart was beating, but it was weak and irregular. His breathing was so shallow that Jake had to watch closely to see his chest moving at all. Luna seemed to know that her youngest son was in the most danger. She positioned herself right next to him and began making soft, worried sounds. Her other two pups were getting stronger by the hour, but this little one was barely holding on to life. "His circulation isn't improving like the others," Amy said, checking the pup's temperature. "I think he was without proper blood flow for too long. His organs might be shutting down." Jake felt his heart sink. They had come so far, saved two of the three pups, but it looked like they might lose the third one anyway. He looked at Luna, who was gently licking her son's tiny face, trying to encourage him to wake up. "There has to be something else we can do," Jake said. "We can't give up now." Dr. Bennett had been monitoring all three pups from her computer station. "Jake, his brain activity is very low. Even if we get his body working again, there might be permanent damage." Luna suddenly stopped, licking her pup, and lifted her head. She looked directly at Jake with her intelligent golden eyes, and Jake felt like she was trying to tell him something important. Then she opened her mouth and began to sing, but this song was different from the others. It was deeper, more complex, with layers of sound that seemed to come from different parts of her throat at the same time. The melody was beautiful and haunting, unlike anything Jake had ever heard. "Amy, are you getting this?" Jake asked. Amy was already recording, her eyes wide with amazement. "Jake, look at the frequency analysis. She's producing multiple tones at once, like a living orchestra." The song seemed to fill the entire medical bay with a strange, warm energy. Jake felt the hair on his arms stand up, and he noticed that the lights in the room were flickering slightly, as if Luna's voice was affecting the electrical systems. But most importantly, the third pup was responding. His heart monitor began beeping faster and more regularly. His breathing deepened, and a little color came back to his gums. "It's working," Dr. Bennett said in amazement. "Whatever she's doing, it's working." Luna continued her complex song for several minutes, never taking her eyes off her youngest son. Jake realized that this wasn't just any song. This was something special, something that mother wolves used only when their pups were in the most serious danger. "Can you match that frequency with our equipment?" Jake asked Amy. Amy was already working on it, but she looked frustrated. "It's too complex. She's producing at least 6 different tones at the same time, and they're all changing in a pattern. I can't figure out." Jake had an idea. "What if we don't try to copy her exactly? What if we just add our sounds to hers?" He adjusted the sonic generator to produce a simple harmony that matched Luna's bass frequency. When he turned it on, something magical happened. Luna's song and the machine's sound blended together perfectly, creating a music that was both alien and familiar. The effect on the third pup was immediate. His eyes fluttered, then opened wide. They were the same beautiful blue as his siblings, but Jake could see that this little one was different. There was something special in his gaze, an intelligence that seemed even deeper than his mother's. Luna's song became a cry of pure joy. She nuzzled her youngest son, who made a tiny squeaking sound in response. All three of her babies were awake now, and they were going to survive. Jake felt tears running down his cheeks. He had never experienced anything so moving in his entire life. Watching this mother's desperate love save her children had changed something inside him. "Look at them," Amy whispered. The three pups were trying to move closer to each other on the examination table. They were still weak, but they were definitely alive and alert. The female pup was the strongest. She managed to lift her head and look around the medical bay with curious eyes. The larger male was trying to stand up, though his legs were still too wobbly to support him. The smallest male, the one they had almost lost, was content to lie still and watch everything with his bright, intelligent eyes. Luna was beside herself with happiness. She moved from pup to pup, gently cleaning them and making soft, encouraging sounds. But Jake noticed that she also kept looking at him and Amy, as if she wanted to thank them but didn't know how. "I think she's trying to show us gratitude," Jake said Dot, as if she understood him. Luna walked over to Jake and gently pressed her large head against his chest. It was clearly a gesture of affection and thanks. Jake carefully put his hand on her head and stroked her soft fur. "You're welcome, girl," he said softly. "Your babies are going to be just fine." Over the next few hours, the three pups grew stronger and more active. They began trying to nurse from their mother, though Luna's milk production had been affected by the stress and cold. Amy prepared a special formula based on what they knew about the pup's nutritional needs. The female pup, who Jake started calling Star because of the white marking on her forehead, was the first to try standing. She was wobbly at first, but determined. Her brothers watched her attempts with interest, as if they were learning from her efforts. The larger male, who had dark fur with silver streaks, was more cautious, but also very curious. He spent a lot of time looking around the medical bay, studying the equipment and the humans who had saved his life. Jake decided to call him Shadow. The smallest male, the one who had almost died, was clearly the most intelligent of the three. Even though he was the weakest physically, Jake could see that his mind was working constantly, processing everything he saw and heard. Jake called him Echo because of the way he seemed to understand and respond to sounds. Dr. Bennett had been documenting everything that happened. "This is going to revolutionize our understanding of alien intelligence," she said. "These creatures aren't just smart animals. They're truly intelligent beings." Luna seemed to understand that the humans were discussing her and her pups. She walked over to Dr. Bennett and sat down in front of her, looking directly into her eyes. Then she did something that made everyone gasp. She extended one of her front paws toward Dr. Bennett, like she was offering to shake hands. Dr. Bennett stared at the offered paw for a moment, then slowly reached out and gently took it in her hand. Luna's paw was large and warm, with thick pads and sharp but carefully controlled claws. "Hello," Dr. Bennett said softly. "I'm Lisa." Luna made a soft sound that almost sounded like she was trying to repeat the word Lisa. It wasn't perfect, but it was clearly an attempt at human speech. Jake felt his heart racing with excitement. This was more than just animal intelligence. Luna was trying to communicate with them using human language. "Amy, tell me you're recording this," Jake said. Amy nodded, her eyes fixed on Luna and Dr. Bennett. Every second of it. Luna released Dr. Bennett's hand and walked back to her pups. But as she settled down next to them, she looked back at the humans and made a series of soft sounds. The tone was clearly friendly, almost conversational. "I think she's trying to tell us something," Jake said. Maybe about her species, or where they come from. The three pups had found comfortable positions next to their mother and were starting to fall asleep. It was a natural, healthy sleep this time, not the dangerous hibernation they had been trapped in. Jake looked around the medical bay at this incredible scene. A few hours ago, he had been alone on a frozen moon, doing routine research work. Now, he was part of something that would change human understanding of alien life. Forever. Luna caught his eye and made a soft sound that Jake was starting to recognize as her way of saying thank you. She had learned to trust these strange creatures, who had saved her children's lives. Get some rest, all of you, Jake said gently. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. 3 days later, the research station had become a very different place. Luna and her three pups had made themselves at home in the medical bay, and the humans were learning something new about them every hour. Jake woke up early and went to check on the wolf family. He found Luna teaching her pups how to walk properly. Star, the female pup, was already running around the room, exploring everything with endless curiosity. Shadow, the larger male, was more careful, but just as interested in his surroundings. Echo, the smallest, preferred to sit and watch, but Jake could see his bright blue eyes tracking every movement and sound. Good morning, Luna, Jake said softly. Luna looked up and made a sound that Jake swore was getting closer to actual words. Over the past few days, she had been trying to copy human speech more and more. She walked over to Jake and gently touched his hand with her nose, which had become her way of saying hello. Amy came into the medical bay carrying a tray of food. How are our patients this morning? The three pups immediately ran to Amy when they smelled the food. They had learned that the humans provided meals, and they were always hungry. Amy had developed a special formula that seemed to agree with their alien digestive systems. They're getting stronger every day, Jake replied, watching Star try to climb onto a chair, and smarter. Yesterday, I saw Shadow figure out how to open the supply cabinet. That's what worries me, Amy said as she set down the food bowls. These creatures are learning too fast. Star actually tried to use one of my instruments yesterday. She picked it up in her mouth and tried to point it at her brother like she had seen me do. Dr. Bennett entered the room with a tablet computer in her hands. I've been analyzing all the data we've collected, and I have some interesting theories about these creatures. She sat down in a chair while the wolf family ate their breakfast. Based on their physical development and behavior patterns, I believe they're not just intelligent animals. They might be a genuinely sentient species. Jake looked up from where he was petting Echo. What do you mean? I mean they might have language, culture, technology of their own. The way Luna knew to bring her pups here for help suggests they've been observing our research station for some time. They understand what humans are and what we're capable of. As if she had heard her name, Luna finished eating and walked over to Dr. Bennett. She sat down and tilted her head, listening carefully to the conversation. See? Dr. Bennett pointed to Luna. She's following our discussion. She might not understand all the words, but she knows we're talking about her and her family. Amy looked skeptical. But how could they have developed technology? We've surveyed this entire moon. There are no signs of civilization or advanced tool use. Dr. Bennett smiled. Maybe we weren't looking for the right things. These creatures are adapted for extreme cold and harsh conditions. Their technology might be biological rather than mechanical. Jake thought about Luna's complex song that had saved Echo's life, like her singing. That wasn't just instinct. That was a learned skill, maybe passed down through generations. Luna stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the frozen landscape. She stared outside for a long moment, then made a series of sounds that were clearly meant to communicate something. She wants to show us something, Jake said, standing up. I think she wants to go outside. Amy shook her head. It's still too dangerous. The storm has calmed down, but it's well below freezing out there. But Jake was already putting on his cold weather gear. She's trying to tell us something important. I think we should listen. Dr. Bennett looked thoughtful. Actually, this might be a good opportunity to learn more about their species. Jake, if you're going out there, take recording equipment. Document everything you see. 20 minutes later, Jake was following Luna across the frozen landscape. She had left her 3 pups in the care of Amy and Dr. Bennett, which showed how much she trusted the humans. The pups had not been happy about being separated from their mother, but Luna had communicated with them in her musical language, and they had settled down to wait. Luna led Jake about half a mile from the research station to a place where several large ice formations created a natural shelter. At first, Jake didn't see anything unusual. Then Luna made a specific sound, and Jake heard answering calls from the ice caves. 5 more wolves emerged from the shelter. They were all adults, slightly smaller than Luna, but with the same intelligent eyes and beautiful fur. When they saw Jake, they stopped and watched him carefully, but they didn't seem afraid. Luna walked up to the other wolves and began what could only be described as a conversation. She made a series of sounds, gestures, and movements that clearly told the story of what had happened to her pups. The other wolves listened intently, occasionally making sounds of their own. Then something amazing happened. One of the other wolves, an older male with scars on his muzzle, approached Jake. He stopped about 3 feet away and made a deep, respectful sound. Then he lowered his head in what Jake recognized as a bow. "You're thanking me," Jake said in wonder. "You're thanking me for helping Luna's pups." The scarred wolf lifted his head and made another sound. Then he turned and led Jake deeper into the ice caves. What Jake saw inside took his breath away. The caves had been modified and organized by the wolves. There were sleeping areas lined with soft materials, food storage areas where preserved meat was kept frozen, and even what looked like a nursery area where several wolf pups played under the watchful eyes of their mothers. But most amazing of all was a large central chamber where the walls were covered with markings. They weren't random scratches. They were deliberate symbols, arranged in patterns that suggested some kind of writing system. Luna walked up to one section of the wall and pointed with her nose to a series of symbols. She made a sound, then pointed to herself. Then she pointed to different symbols and made sounds that Jake recognized as her attempts to say, "Jake, Amy, and Lisa." "This is a record," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. "You're keeping a record of what happened. You're writing about us." Luna made an encouraging sound and pointed to more symbols. Jake realized that the wolves had been documenting their interactions with humans from the very beginning. They had been studying the research station, just as the humans had been studying the moon. The scarred wolf, who seemed to be the leader of this group, approached Jake again. This time, he was carrying something in his mouth. It was a small piece of metal, clearly from human technology, but it had been carefully shaped and polished. Jake took the offered gift and examined it. The metal had been worked into a simple but elegant design, almost like jewelry. It was a token of friendship, proof that the wolves could work with materials and create beautiful objects. "You want to be friends," Jake said, understanding finally dawning on him. "You want to establish a relationship between our species." All the wolves in the cave made soft, approving sounds. Luna came up to Jake and gently pressed her head against his side, the gesture of affection he had come to recognize. Jake spent another hour in the caves, documenting everything he saw and trying to communicate with the wolves. They showed him their food preservation techniques, their child-rearing methods, and more examples of their symbol writing. When it was time to go back to the research station, 6 wolves accompanied Jake instead of just Luna. They wanted to see the place where Luna's pups had been saved. And they wanted to meet the other humans who had helped Dot as they walked back across the ice. Jake realized that everything had changed. This wasn't just a story about saving 3 wolf pups anymore. This was the beginning of first contact between humanity and a genuinely intelligent alien species. The wolves had been watching and studying humans for months, maybe years. They had learned about human technology and compassion. And when Luna's pups were in danger, she had made the decision to trust the strange creatures who lived in the metal building. That trust had saved her children's lives. And now it was going to change the relationship between 2 species forever. When they reached the research station, Jake could see Amy and Dr. Bennett watching from the windows with expressions of amazement. The 3 pups were pressed against the glass, excited to see their mother returning with friends. Jake looked at Luna and the other wolves, then back at the research station where his human colleagues were waiting. 2 different species from 2 different worlds, about to learn that friendship was possible across any distance. 6 months had passed since the day Luna brought her frozen pups to the research station. The small outpost on Valdris Prime had become something completely new, the first place in the galaxy where humans and an alien species lived and worked together as equals. Jake walked through the expanded station corridors, listening to the familiar sounds of both species going about their daily activities. In the main laboratory, he could hear Amy discussing something with Frost, the scarred wolf leader, using a combination of human words and wolf sounds that they had developed together. The research station had been rebuilt and expanded to accommodate both humans and wolves. There were warm sleeping areas for the wolf families, communal spaces where both species could gather, and even a special workshop where humans and wolves worked together on projects that combined human technology with wolf knowledge. Jake found Luna in the communication center, where she spent most of her time these days. She was teaching her 3 pups, who were now almost adult-sized, how to operate some of the simpler human equipment Star had become an expert at using. The environmental sensors. Shadow was learning about the station's heating systems, and Echo had developed an amazing ability to work with the communication arrays. "Good morning, Luna," Jake said in the wolf language he had been learning. Luna responded with a mixture of wolf sounds and human words. Her English had improved dramatically over the months, though she still preferred to use her own language for complex ideas. "Jake friend," she said, using the title the wolves had given him. "Pups learn fast. Star wants to explore far territories today." Star looked up from the sensor equipment she was studying and made an excited sound. At 6 months old, she was as large as Luna and full of energy and curiosity. She had inherited her mother's intelligence and fearless spirit. "Maybe later," Jake said. "First, I want to show you all something special." He led Luna and her family to the main conference room, where Amy, Dr. Bennett, and several other humans were waiting. Also present were Frost and 3 other adult wolves from the pack. "Today is a special day," Dr. Bennett announced to the group. "We're receiving visitors from Earth and from other human colonies. They want to see what we've accomplished here." Luna tilted her head, a gesture Jake now knew meant she was processing information carefully. "Earth humans want to see pack cooperation?" "That's right," Amy said. "Some of them are excited about what we've learned. Others are worried. They don't understand that you and your people are not dangerous." Frost made a low growling sound that Jake recognized as laughter. The old wolf leader had a sense of humor about human fears. "Small-minded humans think wolves are like beasts. We show them truth." Over the past months, the wolves had shared incredible knowledge with the human researchers. They had shown them how to read weather patterns in ways that human instruments missed, how to find resources hidden deep under the ice, and how to survive in conditions that would kill unprotected humans in return. The humans had shared their technology and knowledge. The wolves were natural engineers, and they had quickly learned to use and even improve human tools. Together, they had developed new techniques for ice farming, energy conservation, and long-distance communication. But the most important thing they had developed was friendship. Jake watched Star playing with Echo while Shadow practiced using a computer tablet. The three young wolves had grown up with humans as part of their family. To them, cooperation between species was completely natural. "The transport ship will arrive in 2 hours, Doctor," Bennett said. "I want everyone to be ready to show our visitors how well this partnership works." Amy looked nervous. "What if they want to separate us? What if Earth decides this cooperation is too dangerous?" Luna stood up and walked to the center of the room. She looked at each human present, then at the wolves. "Pack is pack," she said firmly. "Human pack and wolf pack together now. No separation." Frost nodded his agreement. "We protect human friends. They protect wolf friends. This is the way." Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. Over the months, he had come to think of the wolves not just as intelligent aliens, but as family. Luna still came to him when she was worried about something. Her pups treated him like a favorite uncle. The other wolves had accepted him as a full member of their extended pack. When the transport ship arrived, Jake was waiting at the landing pad with Luna, her 3 grown pups, and Frost. The ship was large and impressive, carrying a delegation of scientists, military officers, and government officials from Earth. The first person off the ship was Dr. Sarah Martinez, a famous xenobiologist from Earth's Science Council. She stopped when she saw the group waiting for her eyes wide with amazement. "Incredible," she whispered. "They're even more magnificent than the report suggested." Luna stepped forward and performed the formal greeting the wolves used for important occasions. She stood tall, made a specific series of sounds, and then offered her paw to Dr. Martinez. "Hello, Earth human," Luna said in carefully pronounced English. "Welcome to Wolf human territory." Dr. Martinez stared at Luna's offered paw for a moment, then slowly reached out and shook it. "Hello, I'm Dr. Martinez. It's an honor to meet you." The other visitors from Earth gathered around, some excited, others clearly nervous about being so close to large alien predators. But Jake could see their fear melting away as they watched the easy interaction between humans and wolves. Star, always eager to show off, demonstrated her skill with the environmental sensors. Shadow explained through a combination of gestures and simple words how the heating system worked. Echo performed an amazing display with the communication equipment, creating a song that combined human technology with wolf vocal abilities. "This is remarkable," said Commander Roberts, the military officer in charge of security for the delegation. "They're not just intelligent, they're genuinely cooperative." Over the next 3 days, the Earth delegation observed the daily life of the integrated colony. They saw humans and wolves working together on research projects, sharing meals, and even playing games that both species enjoyed. The wolves demonstrated their natural abilities to navigate in blizzards, find food sources, and predict weather changes. The humans showed how their technology could amplify and support these natural talents. But most importantly, the visitors saw the genuine friendship between the two species. They watched Luna helping Amy with her research, Frost teaching human children wolf language, and the wolf pups playing games with human teenagers. On the last day of the visit, Dr. Martinez sat down with Jake in the observation lounge. "Jake, what you've accomplished here changes everything. This proves that humans can coexist peacefully with alien intelligence." Jake looked out the window where Star and Echo were playing in the snow with 2 human researchers. "It wasn't really our accomplishment, Dr. Martinez. Luna made the first move. She trusted us with her children's lives. Everything that happened after that was just us trying to be worthy of that trust. A Science Council has voted," Dr. Martinez said. "Valdris Prime will become humanity's first official interspecies colony. We're sending more resources, more people who want to learn from what you've built here. Jake felt a surge of excitement and pride. Then he had a worry. What about the wolves? Do they get a say in this decision? Dr. Martinez smiled. That's exactly the right question to ask. And yes, we've already discussed this with Luna and Frost. They're excited about the idea of more humans joining their pack. That evening, there was a celebration that combined human and wolf traditions. Both species shared food, told stories, and made music together. Luna's original Pups, now fully grown, led a song that had become the unofficial anthem of the colony, a harmony that blended human voices with wolf calls. Jake stood at the edge of the celebration, watching his two families enjoy each other's company. Amy came up beside him, holding a tablet that showed messages of congratulations from colonies throughout human space. Look at this, Amy said, showing him the tablet. Research stations on 12 different worlds are asking for wolf partners. Everyone wants to learn from what we've accomplished. Jake smiled, but his attention was drawn to Luna, who was approaching with something in her mouth. She came up to him and dropped a small object at his feet. It was a carving made from ice and metal, showing a human and a wolf standing together under the stars. Luna had made it herself, using techniques she had learned from both her own people and from human teachers. For Jake, friend, Luna said, for saving pack, for making new pack. Jake picked up the beautiful carving and felt tears in his eyes. Thank you, Luna, for trusting us, for showing us that friendship is possible between any two species who are willing to try. Luna pressed her head against Jake's side in the gesture of affection he had come to love. Around them, humans and wolves continued their celebration. Two species from different worlds who had learned that the most incredible thing of all was not technology or intelligence, but the simple willingness to care for each other. The frozen moon of Valdris Prime had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a place where the future was being written by cooperation instead of conquest, by friendship instead of fear, and it had all started with a desperate mother, Valve bringing her frozen pups to a human who was willing to help.